Good morning, everybody, and welcome to Silicon Reef's FATHOM event. So I'm Alex Graves. I'm one of the founders and directors at Silicon Reef who are hosting the event today. Great to have you all here, as I've said. The structure of today is that we're going to have the panelist discussion. I'll introduce them all. Well, they'll introduce themselves shortly. And then we will kick off with a round of discussion and around talking about the topic of employee engagement and innovation. So I'd like to hand over to Tom, just to introduce yourself.
Hi everybody, my name's Tom Brooks, as it says right there. I work for Unilever as part of our collaboration services team. So we're part of IT, but we work closely with our colleagues from corporate comms, digital engagement, HR, to help the business make the most of the technologies that we provide to them.
Cool, and introducing Tiziana from CNET.
Hi everyone, I'm Tiziana. Not an easy name to pronounce, I know. And I work at CNET as marketing manager. And CNET is a video collaboration platform. What that basically is, it's a B2B tool that allows organizations to create video content through their employees at scale. Basically it allows them to tell corporate narratives and stories through the eyes of the people that are closest and most passionate about the matter at stake. And currently at CNET we are focusing a lot on having more marketing efforts, and we are a team of 2 at the moment doing that, including myself. And my focus at the moment is really to communicate CNET's mission of creating a more human and inclusive world through the power of collaborative storytelling, and we're doing it through a series of events that we're hosting in London and New York.
Cool, thank you, Tiziana. And Sam.
Good morning, everybody. So I'm Sam Marshall. This is how my hair looked before Brexit. I'm the owner of Clearbox Consulting. We're a boutique consultancy, which is a nice way of saying very small. There's 8 of us, and 2 of those are dogs. But we specialize in the strategy side of the digital workplace. So we don't deploy any technologies, but we're really interested in helping organizations understand how technology can change their workplace and improve the employee experience.
Great, thanks Sam, thanks everybody. Moving on. So the way this will work is that each of us will introduce our different companies. We already know who we are. We'll tell you a little bit more about the types of journey that we're going on and engaging our employees, and the technology side of it through innovation as well. So I'm going to kick off by talking about Silicon Reef and the journey that we've been on to help people in our mission of really kind of creating that employee-empowered workplace. We are a Microsoft and Office 365 partner. We focus a lot of our efforts around building intranets, solutions, campaign sites to really kind of buy it, to get people to engage and interact with their employees, to communicate that culture, the vision, the values, the mission that your company is on. And we are doing lots of work with some great clients, Unilever here today. So we work with large enterprises through to small enterprises and charities as well, such as Farm Africa. The goal of Silicon Reef is to really try and build solutions that put people at the heart of everything we do, really kind of driving forward what employees are wanting to achieve out of their time in their workplace, but also around giving them people the flexibility to be able to work from home. And we've got a few empty seats here today, which I'm going to assume is down to the train strike. But you know what, that's okay, because people are going to work from home today. That's cool. That's what we encourage. It's the working from home culture, that flexibility that gives people the drive to be able to say, actually, do you know what? I can still get my job done from anywhere. It's absolutely fine. We've got the tools to be able to do that. And at Silicon Reef, we are advocates of that. Amy, who you may have met downstairs on the door, she's from New Zealand. And she joined us and she went and worked, I think she was with us 1 month. And she went and said, actually, guys, I'm going to go back home and work. And she worked from New Zealand for about 2 months. It was totally cool, totally fine. She just worked different hours, but still got the job done. Working from anywhere is what people are expecting in their lives now. And we have people who just want to be able to connect from their devices, communicate at any time of the day that suits them. So at the beginning of this year, Silicon Reef kicked off a thought leadership piece around employee engagement. And we released a white paper, which will be circulated to all of you if you haven't seen it already via our website. It will be sent to you after this event. But we created an employee engagement white paper, really because it was something that was so important to us when we were looking into it and researching about what it means to be engaged in your role within an organization. And these stats, it became really shocking. About 50% of employees worldwide are engaged in their jobs. I couldn't believe that. And we were kicking off our agency 2.5 years ago. And I wanted people to join us, knowing exactly what we're doing and why we're doing it and where we're going. And employee engagement was our first real focus. And the tools that we have available to us in the workplace allow us to be able to communicate better. Silicon Reef do a lot of work with internal comms and HR people, some of you in the room, around campaigns and how we actually drive new innovation and ideas. We do a lot of work with Unilever around strategy communication. Getting ideas from the employees themselves that really kind of grow the message of what it is that the CEO, the top management, and the people be able to contribute to the ideas and future strategy of the business as well. Here's an example of some work that we've done recently with Unilever Research and Development. The R&D teams are based globally. They are spread not just in the UK, but also they're different departments and different teams that never really had an opportunity to communicate together. So they came to us with a challenge that they need to be able to feel more like one. These are your typical collaboration challenges that people have nowadays. Sharing innovation. These guys are research and development scientists, a lot of them. They are people who are there with a lab coat a lot of the time, actually coming up with new ideas. So they need to be able to share across countries. So we worked with them to understand their needs from a people perspective. We're really talking to them, first of all, to understand what are the challenges that they're facing around sharing that culture and that ideas and tying it into really what the R&D purpose is of creating new product innovations for hair products, for example, shampoos, conditioners. So we built them a hair hub, which is their digital innovation area, and it's centralizing all of their tools. So it's putting everything at a click of a fingertip through their toolkit area that you can see there, as well as driving new innovation through news articles that get shared. So this isn't your kind of corporate intranet that the CEO is messaging. We're actually breaking it down into team messaging as well and sharing ideas amongst teams. The enabling collaboration, these guys have really embraced Microsoft Teams. If anybody of you using that, it's a really good tool for breaking down those barriers and engaging. Lots of nodding heads coming around the room, I see. Teams is a great way to be able to connect those people who are globally wouldn't otherwise meet each other. So some highlights for us in delivering this. The connection, as I said, through Teams and putting everything into a central area and creating a search portal for them. And also personalizing those toolkits. So some people in one region work differently from another. They have the ability to customize the apps, customize the things that are available to them on their desktop through the Hair Hub. And Tiziana's going to talk about video engagement shortly, but these guys have really embraced video. The news communications that's coming out from different teams within the organization, different people in different parts of the world, they use it as part of their daily kind of communications for news. And something else that we're really proud of with them, and Tom will talk about this from a wider Unilever perspective, but Yammer has been a great source of engagement for them and really kind of buying into how they're communicating, getting messages out from SVPs, VPs, and they're joining in conversations through Yammer and connecting people. And we're working with R&D Hair Hub in more of a partnership, and what that means from a Silicon Reef perspective is that we're actually growing a relationship to understand their strategy of what they want to achieve, and we help them define that roadmap of, okay, we're going to take steps to really get the understanding and get people buying into the messaging so they do feel engaged in what you're trying to achieve, and then we're going to take you on a digital roadmap to be able to get there. So yeah, the 60% growth of global engagement for all R&D people within 2 months was something we're really proud of. So thinking about innovation, this was also to talk about innovations, things that are coming from Microsoft as well. Hands up if you've actually heard of Kzala. Wow. Yesterday. Okay, great. So, not very many of you. That's good to know. So, this is Microsoft's WhatsApp-style messaging system, I'd say. It looks very much like WhatsApp. You can see the pictures on the left-hand side here. So we've got Yammer, we've got Teams, and they've introduced KZala, which is a new kind of field work. It's a mobile-first application to be able to engage people. So Microsoft have introduced this. It was only introduced, I believe, in April. I think the launch was for global launch of it. It's been on pilot for about a year. And it's really about connecting with those remote workers. So if you have a challenge of engaging with people who are a global and remote audience, this app is being seen as a mobile-first opportunity for field workers. So these could be your engineers, your sales teams, who need to be able to connect in and buy into what's going on from a kind of wider perspective and then beyond Teams and Yammer. So it allows people to be able to use their mobile number to be able to connect in via KZala. And the roadmap that Microsoft are taking this on is that it actually will integrate with things like Teams in the future as well. So it will become part of that ecosystem. So all of the traditional things like announcements, meetings, photos with their location, which you can do on WhatsApp today. It's bringing that employee experience of, I can do this on WhatsApp. Why can't I do it in my workplace as well? We've got this new workforce that are being introduced now that expect these tools that they use in their outside world, like WhatsApp, introducing that same style of interface and technology into the workplace as well. The generations are now expecting these things when they come in and join an organization to be able to say, I need to be able to connect with these people, but I'm not based in the office. I'm based in an oil rig, for example, and I need to be able to connect in. What am I doing about connecting into those people? This is Microsoft's future vision and roadmap for doing that. It's only been around 2 months, and the fact that only 2 people in the room, and one of them Sam, knows about it, just shows you that there's a bit of a journey that they'll go on to be able to roll this out. And I'll show you a slide in a second about, again, the the white paper that we've created about demystifying some of these Microsoft technologies. And has anybody heard of SharePoint Spaces? Hey, a few more hands, that's good. So again, this was announced by Microsoft the end of last year, beginning of this year at a conference, and this is in private preview still. So it's not actually something that they're rolling out in general availability like KZala. This is a mixed reality. So you can see there the lady with the VR headset on. This is them introducing a new way of working, which is a bit more engaging for people. So when you think about the future of what's coming down the line, VR is becoming more of a accepted way of being able to interact with games, games, and again, thinking about that future workforce that are coming in the next 5 to 10 years, this is going to be the norm. Things like putting on a headset, doing conferences, having virtual meetings with people. I wanted to just show you this and where SharePoint Spaces is going in our understanding from Microsoft. They're introducing the ability to be able to, this in the top right corner here is the landscape where actually everything that is driven behind here is from a SharePoint site. So if you've got SharePoint, you understand how SharePoint drives from lists and libraries, the content that's surfaced up to people, putting on the headset to be able to engage and interact with that material, review your documents is where it's going as well in the future. But also things like employee onboarding. Such an important part of engagement for people is to be able to say, I really want to understand who is around my team. How's the organization structured? Got things like an org chart, a virtual org chart where you can put on the headset, click through, interact with what's going on, people's profiles. Maybe there'll be video profiles that you can watch through your headset as well. The journey that this will go on over the next few years is yet to evolve, really, and we'll see where it will lead us into. But SharePoint Spaces is a kind of really exciting innovation that's coming from Microsoft. And in terms of engagement, I see it being really kind of an immersive experience that makes people go, okay, yeah, I can actually visualize that and see that. The way that you can interact and run your meetings now will also change as well.
It's, if I can just add something in there, when I went to a preview of this at Microsoft a little while ago, and they actually described it as being a bit like 3D SharePoint. And if you think about if you use SharePoint, how SharePoint is structured, it's folders within folders or pages within pages. And actually this just gives you that ability to go in rather than just down. So, as you're clicking in and then you're clicking across to a different library and then you're trying to navigate your way around SharePoint, this just actually makes a lot of sense because you're going in and you're navigating around and you're looking around you. So it's quite an amazing experience to get into it, just because it really gives you that ability to understand the dynamics of your information.
Cool. So yeah, this is one to watch, and it's quite an exciting space that's coming in the future as well. My final slide, this is from our thought leadership piece around the employee engagement experience and demystifying a bit of Office 365. If you've seen the Microsoft wheel that they have of all of the applications that are available to you, and it's a little bit confusing to know what to use when and why. That's one of the most common questions that we have when we're talking to organizations. We've taken a bit of a slant on it of how can we break it down into a different way, and we've put it like how to make it fun, how to facilitate flexibility, your agile working, how to recognize your employees. Another part of really employee engagement is recognizing value of people and giving people recognition. So using things like Teams and Yammer, the praise that's now come into Teams, sending your colleagues praise is a great feature from Teams. Broadcast communications, better conversations, and building relationships with your colleagues. Again, one of the fundamental things that employees find is that engaging with their management is a difficult thing to do. And often that's people get disengaged and disenfranchised from the organization because they don't agree or don't buy into the management layer. And using things like Yammer and Teams to be able to comment back to your CEO. The CEO do things like Yam Jams that Tom's going to talk about shortly, and asking questions and getting engaged and interacting with them. It gives employees a voice, which I think is really important to be able to understanding and communicating that culture, and people really understanding that this is where we're going, everybody. Ask me a question about it. I'm open to being engaged. So we created this wheel to be able to just break it down a bit more easier to understand and digest. Again, the link to this will be sent to you afterwards to be able to really kind of go into it a bit more. If you have any questions about it, please come back to me. But that was my last slide, and I'm now going to hand over to Tom from Unilever to talk about how they've used Yammer.
Thank you very much. So as you can see here, that's my name, and this is where I work. So getting straight into it.
That way.
Just check I didn't go through two then. Right. Now it's jumping around. Here we go. So, whistle-stop tour of who Unilever is, mainly because there is a point to it when I get there. We make a lot of the world's favourite brands. Basically, if you've got a kitchen or a bathroom, there's a reasonable chance that there's some Unilever products in there. And you can see some of the big worldwide brands on your screen just there. And this all helps. The reason for showing this is to, A, give you a little bit of a clue, but also to say, as an employee, when you work for a company that creates these kind of brands, it's not too difficult to get behind it, right? Because you understand it, you buy it every day, you're an advocate for your brand just by your purchasing decisions. And this is Unilever's purpose, which is to make sustainable living commonplace. And what does this mean? Well, they're all about trying to live within our means. So let's try and reduce our impact on the world. Let's try and make it profitable. Let's try and make it sustainable. Let's try and do things in a better way than companies have been doing before. And we're doing this by decoupling our ambitions to grow from our impact on the world. So we're trying to reduce our impact on the planet whilst also continuing to grow our business. Couple of ways in which we're trying to do this here. We're very passionate about sustainably sourced raw materials, and we're moving to a position where all of our materials will be sustainably sourced. We're very passionate about equal opportunities, whether that's ensuring that farmers are getting paid a fair wage, or equal opportunities for women in some parts of the world where that's a new challenge. And then making sure that the planet is protected and that water is access to clean water is provided everywhere. Unilever's got 3 big goals at the moment: helping more than 1 billion people improve their health and well-being, halving the environmental impact of our products, as I said before, and enhancing the livelihood of millions of people. And employees are behind this. So we have a program called Bright Future, where we talk to the business and we get people from the business to contribute to the ideas of what we want to do next. I'll talk about it in a little bit more later, but recently we've got a new CEO who's been part of the business for 20 years because longevity and having that Unilever ethos is important. And he did basically a call out via Yammer and said, what's important to you? And what new ideas have you got for how we can be better in the future? And so employees are behind this. So that means job done, right? All of our employees are engaged. We work for an amazing company that sells amazing things and looks after the world and is trying to do better. Therefore, all of our employees come into work with a smile on their face every day, work 16-hour days and, work for nothing. Not quite. So enabling the digital employee, enabling employee experience takes work. And this was a bit of a nicely curated brain dump, if you like, of some of the ways in which there are some challenges for helping to manage and facilitate employee experience and employee engagement throughout the organisation. So just whistling through these very briefly. What about WhatsApp? Our employees, as I'm sure everyone in this room will attest to, have now got, everyone's an expert. Everyone has expert level understanding of what tools they want and need in the business. They use WhatsApp, they use Facebook, they use Instagram, they use Slack, they use other tools that I'm too old to be using myself now. And therefore they want it all. And how do we as an organisation facilitate that or manage that is a real challenge for enterprises, especially one the size of ours. My work, our work. So this is about two quite different but really important elements. The first one that I'm really quite passionate about is social, the power of the crowd. It used to be the case that you were doing a piece of work, you were trying to write 500 words on X subject, and you'd sit there and you'd scratch your head and you'd maybe look something up and you'd try and figure it out and maybe you'd talk to one of your colleagues. Why bother, right? Why not do a 50-page summary of what you're trying to achieve, make it socially available and get other people to do your work for you? I'm all about trying to get more people to do my work for me. It's only because I had to do these slides yesterday after I just got back from a lovely holiday, which I'll tell anyone about afterwards, that I couldn't get my team to do these slides for me. Otherwise, I'd have been very happy to do that. But the power of the crowd is awesome, and the way in which I think digital is a real game changer is the fact that it allows us to do things differently, better, with our colleagues, faster. And the other bit here, which is also so critical, is structure and data management. If you throw tools out there thinking people are just going to use them and it's all going to make sense, or even if you allow people to use their own thing, work in their own way, use WhatsApp, you're going to get problems pretty darn quickly in terms of, okay, well, where's that bit of information that I stored 6 months ago? Or where did you put it? Which tool did you use? Who told you to put it there? How did you decide how you were going to tag it? Data management, how you tag information, how you store information is absolutely crucial. Or you have to go super flexible and super relaxed about it. Open versus secure, which is connected to some of the others. Again, if you work in IT or if you work for anyone, basically you'll have an understanding of the tension between, on the one hand, being open, easy access, easy to set up, easy to serve yourself, on the one hand, and we've got to keep this safe, we've got to keep this structured, we've got to make sure that only the right people have the right access at the right level. And getting that balance right is a challenge for every organisation. Then finally, there's this increasingly, everyone is used to YouTube now. Everyone wants to learn it themselves. Everyone wants a 3-minute video in order to understand how to do it. If you buy an iPhone, your instruction guide is basically, here's the on and off button, and that's it, right? But on the flip side, you've got a lot of people in a lot of places in the organisation, especially those more senior roles, who they don't want to be learning. They don't want to be going to a site you point them at and watching a video or reading a guide. They want you to tell them. They want you to come and sit next to them and handhold them through how they do it. And that tension is a really interesting one as well, between giving people the tools, letting them do it on the one hand, and providing the right level of support on the other. And this is all exacerbated by the fact that you can't spend 6 months figuring out a plan for this and then spend a year or two implementing it in a stable environment. Things are changing on a weekly basis, and therefore you've got to be able to adapt and respond. Fortunately, help is at hand. There is a pun in there if anyone's interested. So I'm going to beat my way all through the whole. There we go. So our tech partners are stepping up. You know, we work a lot with Microsoft. We're increasingly working with Akumina, who are sat at the back of the room, if you want to talk to them later on. Tech partners are stepping up. They get that our employees want consumer-level experiences. They get that they don't want just dry, basic, grayscale technologies, and therefore they're providing us with the tools that make it compelling, that we can say, yeah, but this tool is just as cool as Instagram, Facebook, but it's enterprise ready. They're also providing us with the enterprise level controls that mean we can make it safe. We can understand which bits we want our end users to use or not. We've got a coalition of the willing. We've got our corporate comms colleagues, our HR colleagues. And even though we sometimes have different endpoints or different ways of getting to those endpoints, we all share the same vision. We've got agencies like Silicon Reef and others who are able to meet, surpass, or sometimes just manage expectations of what our users should expect. You don't need this to be all singing and all dancing. You're only trying to share one thing with one person in one place, right? Keep it low, keep it manageable, keep it scalable, that then means that trying to find it in a year's time is going to be easier. And we've also got agencies like Silicon Reef who are making these experiences exciting and are helping our business teams to understand the kind of experience that they can have and how they can make sure that things meet their requirements. And increasingly, our users are educated. You know, the people that work for me know far more about the things that I manage than I do. You know, I'm there to kind of nudge them in the right direction. And the employees joining the organisation nowadays, they know far more about how to work digitally than I do. I had a grad working for me for 12 months up until a year. In fact, he was an apprentice with a view to getting onto the grad scheme. He started on the grad scheme next month, which is awesome. And he knew SharePoint before he'd even joined the organisation. I'm like, where on earth have you learned SharePoint from? It's like, we did it at school. I'm like, why? Why would you do that? But, you know, kids today, you know, young people coming through onto the market, they get it. And therefore, those guys are more able, willing to go, okay, point me in the right direction, I'll go and learn it myself. It's just the old laggards where we need to do the hand-holding and look after them in a slightly different way. So, technology is a booster for employee engagement. You know, I've spoken a little bit about some of the challenges, but I don't want to scare anyone. I don't want to undermine anyone's ambitions. You know, technology helps create opportunities for employees to get involved, whether that's through Yammer, reaching out to the business and asking them to contribute ideas about how we do things differently. It enables the business to share the vision and to share important information with the business. It allows multi-directional dialogue. It's not just two-way anymore. You know, you've got teams talking to different teams. You've got people in marketing suggesting things to R&D. You've got people in R&D talking to supply chain and giving them suggestions about how we can repackage things differently. But it does need planning, effort, and commitment. And the other thing I should have added on there is flexibility. Just a very quick one about Yammer. So we've rolled out Yammer into Unilever. Now, we'd already got Chatter in place. Chatter's been at Unilever for quite a long time as enterprise social, 6, 7, 8 years before my time. And we've rolled out Yammer recently. And we were starting to do it getting some really good traction with it. But the game changer was we had this new CEO arrive that I mentioned a couple of minutes back. And we managed to convince the CEO that the way that he was going to differentiate himself from the previous CEO, who was also awesome, was to position himself as a bit down with the kids, roll his sleeves up, get involved, be social, be available, make himself available to people. So we were able to tie the rollout of Yammer with his coming on board the organisation. This bit of providence has meant that our Yammer usage rate is off the charts. And the numbers behind are talking about this little particular activity, but we've got tens of thousands of active Yammer users. Our business is 150,000 employees, so it's all relative. But we've got tens of thousands of Yammer users who are active and talking on Yammer 3 months after we've pressed the button on the go live. And that's really cool. And it's happened because of that coalition of the willing, because our digital engagement, our corporate comms colleagues, our R&D teams, our technology partners, our CEO and his team have all decided this is where we're going to spend our time and effort to get it done. And that's about it for me. So I'll hand it over, and any questions later, come up and have a chat.
Cool. Hand over to Tiziana to talk to you about the CNET app and how they're using it for engaging employees with videos.
Yes, so as I said earlier, CNET is all about giving employees or empowering employees to become your mobile film crew and your brand ambassadors. And so our take on communication and engagement comes from the perspective of really driving inclusivity when communicating, and similar to what Tom and Alex were saying, organizations should start to move away from one-way conversations, especially when they only come from the top down. So for CNET, employee engagement is really about giving everyone a voice. And the way we do this kind of engagement is through video. And so what we found is that video is one of the most powerful types of content, especially when this kind of content is user-generated. It gives people, it allows them to basically film in a safe space, and by doing that, to truly be themselves and speak up when they're basically contributing to a matter or to an initiative. And more so, what makes video and employee-generated video even more authentic is if it's created collaboratively. So we found that if you include multiple perspectives and include multiple people to tell one story, it makes it more powerful. And by including them into your story, they actually listen, and it also basically inspires people to take action. And the power, what makes video then so powerful is that compared to communicating through an email and basically overwhelming your people with just facts, video really tells a story. And if you involve your people, you touch on emotion rather than on logic. And that's what truly engages people. That's what inspires to action. And this is what helps your organization to be more inclusive around their corporate narrative. So yes, let's see if this works. Oh. Say that again. 1 second. Before the start, so before I dive into more detail about how CNET actually works, I wanted to share this video with you. It's a short one, I promise. But we are a video platform company, so duh. I hope I can start from scratch. But basically, I just wanted to show some of the amazing content that some of our customers like Novartis, Amazon, HSBC are creating from all around the world. to really drive diversity and or champion diversity, drive communication, engagement, and inclusivity around the business. So let me just try and go back.
I wish you all the best. Say that again. Hi, Laura.
I just can't believe it.
For the record, I'm done trying to make y'all comfortable. For the record, you ain't trying to grow, then it's done for you. For the record, lab on me going all the way. For the record, nice to y'all. Now I gotta up price on y'all.
We still don't have equality in many places of the world.
Being completely real, being honest, also being open to love who you want.
Absolutely thrilled to be here at the Facebook campus.
Just set your camera up, press the record button, and start talking.
Lab on me going all the way.
Yes, so I don't know about you guys, but when I see something like that, it always reminds me of how big this world is and how diverse it is and how kind of small we are in this world. And at the same time, I think it's incredible how technology nowadays really makes this type of global communication accessible to everyone. So it's this balance between making you realize how small you are, but also today, basically, people, countries who previously felt disengaged are suddenly able to be part of the conversation, which is great, and which is something that we are trying to enable through CNET and are enabling through CNET. So to give you a better understanding of how CNET actually works, I'm just going to quickly touch on that. So CNET works with a two-part system. It's an online studio and a mobile phone app. So basically, organizations can create a project around an initiative or a cause and create filming directions. That's the first step. They can break down their directions in short shots to make it really easy for their audience to then engage and contribute to the story. So organizations can invite their employees, their advocates, their fans and customers to engage with their cause, get the CNET app downloaded and start filming. All the clips that are filmed by people from really all over the world and different countries are collected in a central place, which is the CNET studio. And that's where all the content can be reviewed and curated and finally edited so that you can bring all the different perspectives together into one final edit and then share it. And basically you then have your videos that can be placed on any intranet, which we're going to be hearing more about from Sam, or any sharing platform that we heard about earlier, social media, all your YouTube channels, website, and so on. So this is how it works in a nutshell. And these are the three core challenges that we identified and that we are helping organizations to solve through CNET and through video. So one, and first of all, is what I've already been talking about. It's retaining top talent. It's very important, as we all know, to engage your employees and make them feel valued and give them a voice, because that's what nowadays people care about. And this is the type of engagement that CNET allows organizations to drive. Second of all, it's about attracting top talent. So organizations nowadays have to compete with more and more cool startups like us with fun cultures. So big global corporates have to now basically position themselves, not just position themselves, but actually be human, be caring, and basically show everyone what it's like to work at this specific company. And so it's really about humanizing your brand from the inside out. And that's what we help organizations do through video. And third challenge that every large global business has is basically how to effectively communicate anything from from explaining the new pension scheme across 50 or 100 offices all over the world to championing initiatives like CSR initiatives and so on at a global scale is quite difficult. People are nowadays overwhelmed with information, and so bringing this kind of information across the video has been quite helpful for our customers. This is one of the examples I just briefly wanted to touch on. We started working with Novartis a couple of months ago, and Novartis is the fourth largest pharmaceutical company in the world. They have 126,000 employees, not quite as much as Unilever, but almost. And basically, this in the past 2 months that we've been working with Novartis, they have created over 60 videos with CNET. And these videos vary from D&I content. They have created some amazing D&I content around Pride Week. Recently, they have created a large number of recruitment videos, basically bringing job descriptions to life through video, as the pharmaceutical industry is quite competitive when it comes to recruiting talent. And as a third major project that they've been running through CNET is similar to what Tom was touching on that Unilever is doing with their new CEO. And they have their new EVP, which is all about unbossing the organization, which we already heard how important it is. So they've been basically releasing daily episodes of a day in a life of their CEO, basically. And this is just, I screenshotted this from LinkedIn just to show how much engagement they're actually getting. It's a bit small, so you might not see, but they're getting amazing engagement. This is a post of their CEO, and they're first they were sharing it internally and getting amazing engagement and feedback. And now they started sharing this externally as well. And then they get comments from their own employees saying something like, wonderful Vas, thank you for humanizing Novartis and leading the change, #inspiring change. And yes, so this is just an example of how we help organizations solve some of their issues. So last but not least, I wanted to share this with you. It's basically one of the thought leadership pieces that we have started to create at CNET around how to tell impactful stories. And I can't go through all of this now because I'm sure I'm running out of time, but you can email me and I'm happy to share this with you afterwards. And in a nutshell, what it is we had a breakfast get together with 22 people from different companies, including passionate and really experienced storytellers who together we basically created this and we brainstormed what makes a story memorable and what makes a story impactful, and we just came up with this this image of telling stories that inspire, be inclusive, educate, be human, support and champion the ones who are brave enough to speak up, as well as develop ambassadors who have a real purpose and point of view, also make the invisible visible, from leadership to employee, and so on. So as I said, please feel free to email me and I'm happy to share this with you afterwards. And yes, that's it from me.
Hand over to Sam.
Directly to Sam. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Marvelous. Okay, so I wanted to talk about employee engagement from the perspective of what digital workplaces can do. And I guess a lot of the time when I hear about employee engagement, it strikes me that people talk about it as if it's something you do to employees to raise up their engagement. And I kind of like to argue that there's another side to it, which is when you start a job on day one, you're already at maximum engagement, you're excited about it, you believe in the company, you embrace the brands and so on. And often what happens is that through the course of the work, it steadily erodes. And our challenge with engagement then is to stop it going downhill. It's a little bit like when you see the advert and your mouth starts to say, oh, this is going to be great, and then the reality is somewhat of a letdown. So the logic of my argument goes a little bit like this. Happy employees are more productive. They provide better customer service because they can focus more on what the customer wants rather than the things that are annoying themselves. And they cost less because they stay in the job for longer. And churn, turnover, absenteeism are all expensive things. Expression in God we trust, everyone else bring data. Well, here's some data. How many of you know the Gallup G12 survey? It's like an annual employee satisfaction survey. Yeah, good for you, great. So so often, what Gallup do is a meta-analysis of all the data they gather from all the companies that they work with. And in 2017, that was about 84,000 business units, so not people, business units across 50 industries and 70-odd countries. It's a great, big, lovely data set. And one of the things they pulled out is that in the upper quartile of organizations that got a high engagement, profitability is 21% up compared to the bottom quarter. But also, absenteeism is 41% lower when you have high engagement. So it's not just a nice to have, these are real tangible benefits when you get employee engagement right. And remember what I said about absenteeism? Well, not many people have looked into the costs of this, but there was one by Oxford Economics done in 2014. And they said the average cost of replacing an employee is about £35,000. So some of that's recruitment costs and the HR costs, but a lot of it is that it takes on average more than half a year, 28 weeks, for that replacement employee to come up to full productivity. So if you've got happy employees and they stay longer, you're reducing that cost. Where does a digital workplace come in? Well, I strongly believe that a good digital workplace can contribute to happier employees. Back to the Gallup data, so one of the 12 things that they ask is, do you agree that I have the tools and equipment to do my work right? A low score on this, of all those 12 things, is the strongest indicator of stress. For knowledge workers, for most people who are dealing with information, working in an office or even out on the road these days, having the right tools and equipment equates to having the right information, the right digital tools to do their job. So that's where we can make a difference. And the third bit comes from a book that I absolutely recommend you at least read the first chapter of, which is called The Progress Principle. And it's by a husband and wife team at Harvard Business School called Imabile and Kramer. And what they did was a diary study. They got 238 people from 7 different organizations. And basically, at the end of each day, they just emailed them saying, tell us a story about something that motivated you or demotivated you today. And they collated all these responses and broke it down to individual events, and there were 64,000 separate events. And then they classified them according to kinds of motivation and demotivator. And when they ranked them all, the thing that motivated people by far, and it was a really distinctive gap, was making progress on meaningful work. People just wanted to get the job done. If they set out in the morning saying, I really want to finish that proposal, or I really want to help this employee because I know they're in trouble, and they get a chance to do that without the bureaucracy, the meetings, they're getting waylaid, they reported that as being a really good day. Now, interestingly, Imabile and Kramer took these 8 things that they'd ranked and mixed them all up and gave them to over 600 managers and said, sort these into the order of what's most important for motivating your employees. They put making progress on meaningful work dead last. At the top was recognition from me, opportunities, promotion, pay, the usual stuff. It doesn't actually seem to work that way. So the third bit then of the logic is that a digital workplace can help with that, but it doesn't give you a vision. So when you think about your digital workplace, what I suggest is think about it in terms of how can our digital workplace help our employees make progress on meaningful work? How can we get all the rubbish stuff out of the way and let them get on with what they're already motivated to do? So we need to get inside the heads of our employees. This is Marcus. Marcus is a persona. Who's done personas before? Yeah, good for you. Great, yeah. So I think a persona is a little bit like movie characters in that they're not real people, but they should feel plausible as real people. Personas should represent your employees, but normally they're slightly better looking. And what they do is articulate data. So at Clearbox, when we do like discovery work, we'll get loads of survey responses and focus groups and do observation studies and so on. And what I found is if we turn that into a bunch of bar charts and put it in front of senior people, everybody can critique a bar chart, but it doesn't really seem to influence the decisions that they make. So instead we turn that into 7 or 8 personas that represent the diversity of the employees that they have and the roles that they do. And then when we say, we think it'd be really good to introduce something like Kaizala or Asinis, how do you think Marcus would react? People engage with that because now you can envisage what it's like to be Marcus. And you can see we talk about his goals, his frustrations, his communication needs, the kind of digital channels that he has right now, and we'll get some who are very digitally savvy and some that aren't, and some that are long-standing with the business and some that are new to the business. And you can start to explore that. Everyone else this morning has had a wheel, so I'm glad that I got a wheel as well. This is Marcus. Imagine the circle represents the 8 hours of Marcus's working day. So we can start to chart out how does he spend his time in terms of his digital points of engagement. And we might say, look, there's some things that are working well, so he's happy with what he does in Word and PowerPoint and so on. Bottom right, we talk about LOB applications. So everybody normally, when you say to them, what's the one thing you can't do without, it's usually a tool that's very specific to their job. So if you're a lawyer, it might be a case management system. If you're an architect, it might be a CAD system. If you're researchers, it might be an electronic lab notebook. So that's normally optimized for their work, and that's fine. It's the generic stuff like email, where people like Marcus tend to say, I get too many, people send me attachments, I can't find information, where you can start to say, well, with Office 365, how can we shift some of that burden onto the other things that are more suitable for it, such as getting them using document sharing or OneDrive or working in Teams more effectively, rather than relying on a tool like email. But often what we hear is that a big frustration is the employee services bit. It's not a large part of the day, but most people see that bureaucracy thing as not getting on with work, not making progress. So we can borrow from the consumer world again and do things like journey mapping to get inside how that feels. So the idea of journey mapping is that you take an objective for the individual, what they're trying to achieve, and then you work through the various steps that they go through. But you also, if you look at the smiley faces, consider what's their emotional state. Are they feeling good or bad about what's happening? So let's say that Marcus's boss has come along one day and said, Marcus, at the moment you're a lowly project administrator. One day you could be a project manager, which is way better. I want you to go along and do some training. So Marcus goes to his intranet, he logs on, searches for training, and he gets PowerPoint slides from about 7 years ago on manual lifting. Oh, the internet never works. So he phones up his HR help desk, listens to some dreadful music for about 7 minutes, and eventually he gets to say, oh, Marcus, we don't call training training, we call it learning and development. Go back to the internet and search for learning and development. So he's gone from feeling quite happy about getting training to feeling a bit frustrated, but he goes back to the intranet, and eventually hidden under central services, he finds L&D and he clicks on it, and let's say he gets into a learning and development system, and it actually works pretty well. He goes, gosh, it's great that I can do on-site training, can do distance learning, they've got ones on project management, so his emotional state's up again. Clicks to book it, and it says, what's your cost code? Don't know. Please select your line manager, and it's not synced with Active Directory, so his line manager isn't in there. At this point, he abandons the whole process. He goes on to something like Yammer. He disrupts another 30 colleagues saying, guys, I'm stuck. What do I do? So he's wasted maybe 15, 20 minutes. But what's more important is that he's feeling like he hasn't got any work done. And that probably kind of is a cloud over the rest of his day. So this is the kind of thing that we need to fix. And what you'll notice is that the individual elements of this are actually working okay. The challenge for our digital workplace is to recognize that most tasks involve working across the different systems, and often we leave big gaps that employees fall through. It's not well stitched together. So to help make sense of that, what we've developed at Clearbox over the last 7 years and kind of evolved with about 60 projects with customers now, is this digital workplace framework. And the idea of the framework is that it's a comprehensive and systematic look at the things that you need to consider. not every organisation is going to do every single element of it, but it's almost like there's a checklist to allow you to say, this is important to us, or it isn't. And you'll see that it's modelled on a town. And to me, evolving our digital workplace is a bit like town planning in that you can't bulldoze everything and start from this lovely clean sheet and build it all so it's perfectly integrated. The reality is that you're going to have legacy systems that you need to work around, some things that you can't change. But every so often, like our town in the top corner next to the factory, there's an empty plot. There's a chance to develop something new. So the trick is to say, where do we want to be in a year, 2 years' time, 3 years' time, and consistently exploit those opportunities in a way that takes you to where you need to be. In the same way, if our town wants to be a tourist destination, in that empty space you want theatres, cafes, bars. If it wants to be a hub of industry, maybe you want another factory. What you don't want to say is we want to be a tourist town and then build a dirty great factory right in the middle of it, because those are opposed to your goals. So you'll see there's 10 boxes, 5 blue ones and 5 green ones. The 5 blue ones we think of as capabilities or services that your digital workplace should deliver. So it's not tech, because the technology changes quite often. It's about what are your employees trying to do. And the 5 green ones at the bottom are the management competencies and resources you need to execute well day to day. If you think in our town, for example, we've got this green space at the bottom. It's all very well putting a football pitch down, but if you haven't got people who are going to cut the grass and pick up the litter, it's not actually going to be a very useful service for very long. So if we just zoom in and take you through it. So first of all, we have communicate and engage. So employees need to be able to communicate formally, so that's where intranets come in and the kind of the top-down communication, but there's also more peer-to-peer, so the likes of Teams and CNET and so on. And there's orientation, so just understanding how is it that a big company like Unilever or Novartis fits together. Then we have collaboration represented by the building site. So again, some of it's like big projects with Gantt charts and project plans, but a lot of it is more about, we've got this customer problem, can we informally come together and come up with a solution for it? Third, we have the library representing finding and sharing. So yes, the search, of course, search is important, but often one of the reasons why search doesn't work is that we haven't classified and stored things in the right way, or indeed we've left them on a network drive so the search engine doesn't even know it exists. Fourthly, represented by the factory, we have business applications, so you need access to both those hardcore line of business things, but also employee services. And lastly, the airport represents agile working, so being productive anytime, any place. So every organisation is going to have a slightly different profile for what matters to you. And the way in which you deliver the services will probably evolve over time. So right now you might say, we're going to collaborate using Yammer, but in time we'd like to move that over to using Microsoft Teams, and that's fine. The requirement is constant, but the way in which you fulfill it will change. The green boxes then, so you need a strategy to understand how to make the right choices as the opportunities come up. You need governance, which is kind of like the rules of the road for day to day. So when someone comes along saying, can we have a SharePoint communication site? You don't say, oh, you know, we need to get the committee together to consider that. You've already said, if you meet these conditions, yes, go ahead. You need the right set of resources, of course, to cut the grass. You need to think about adoption. So in our little town, we've got a football pitch. Imagine our goal is that we've got healthy and active citizens. It's the same with the digital workplace. Normally, when you roll out a tool, you have an ambition for how people are going to use it, and you need to coach them, model that behavior for what you want to see. Then we need to think about the user experience. So it should be attractive, it should be accessible because there's laws about discrimination, it should be easy to pick up and learn and use. And lastly, of course, you need robust and scalable technology. All of those, of course, driven by what it is that employees are trying to do and using the technology to basically get out the way and let them do it. Thank you. If anybody wants pictures of that last one, I've got some printouts with me.
Great, thank you, Sam. Okay, so we finished the panelist discussions, and I think what we're going to do now is just to summarise some key takeaways of the things that we've discussed today. For me, and from my perspective, it is about the people first element. It's understanding what people are trying to do in their day jobs, helping them be more productive. Productivity, as we've learned, is a really key activity within any organisation. That's how people feel like they're giving back to the organisation to achieve the goals. And we have a set of tools available to us within the workplace, whether they're line of business. And I think Sam's point about like building a persona that shows here's an employee and who they are and what they're trying to achieve out of their day. They spend a quarter of their day doing things they don't want to be doing. How can we shift that mentality using the tools that we've got through effective communication, training and adoption that helps them really say, actually, I don't want to be frustrated in my workplace anymore because I understand what we're trying to achieve, what tools are available to me to do it, and how to use them to get my job done. I think that's some of the things for me that have been discussed today that I'd like to take away. Tom, anything from you that you'd like to?
I think, everything's been really interesting. I think the thing for me is about being more authentic and being more human, as Diana was talking about. I think remembering to think about not just, what your senior stakeholders say they want to achieve, but actually reaching out and talking to your end users, your employees, the people who are having that experience and saying, what do you need and how do you want us to help you to do more, is really, really important. And getting those balances right across those different dynamics is just really, really critical.
Cool. And Tiziana?
Yes, I definitely agree on what both of you just said, and I think if there's one thing I hope that all of you can take away from what we were saying is that how important it is to just tell stories, and as Tom just said, when telling these stories, be inclusive, and also communicate messages in a more human and authentic way, which makes impact. Because at the end of the day, I think if you don't include your people, people are at the beating heart of every organization, as we know, and as Alex just said. So if you don't make your storytelling more engaging, and if you don't engage your people, your messages won't resonate. So I think that's hopefully one thing we can all take away.
Cool. And Sam, other than having a wheel for all of the things that we talk about today, what else have you taken away?
Definitely, the wheel was a great invention, wasn't it? Yeah. But what struck me about Tom's wheel was he talked about tensions, and that's the reality of it, that employees are coming in with more of a consumer mindset. Most IT people would say everything works great until the users log in, and then it all goes awfully wrong from there, and wish we didn't have them. But I talked about a big framework, and actually it's about having that vision, but then bringing it down to very practical changes. So, with the Kaizala, we've seen it, and all these little nudges that you can make towards it being the right direction, and understanding when the tension is maybe pulling in the right direction and leaping on that chance when you can, rather than pulling it with a 10-year program and never actually getting funding for it.
Great. Well, thank you, everybody. And going to open up to some questions. Thank you. So we do have some questions already submitted by Slido. If you don't feel like you have to use that, feel like you put your hand up and ask anything as well. But while you're thinking of your questions, we do have a question for Sam. Client life cycle. How do you know when to step away?
From a client?
Well,
I should look in the room. We can talk, otherwise it's like daytime TV. Go on. Can someone expand a bit on that?
I think the question is, how do you know in terms of your offering, what's the life cycle of the client, and together?
So in terms of what we do at Clearbox, it's very much about there's a strategy piece that often people have never done before, because people do whole jobs rather than the little bit that Clearbox focuses on. So we help them by bringing a methodology for a very specific time, and normally going through big changes. So the triggers might be a merger and acquisition or a big platform change. So a lot of what we do happens to be organizations moving over to Office 365, and that's the trigger to say, what else can we do with it? Or it might be about a big restructuring or a 5-year plan coming into place. And we are helping them do the analysis to say, if your business wants to achieve these 5 things, what are the implications for where digital can help? It's not the whole thing, of course. There'll be a management element and a resource element and so on. But usually there are some elements that are very sensitive to digital workplace helping. So we worked with a travel company, for example, that was expanding into Latin America. And for them, up to that point, all their meetings would tend to be, let's get everybody to face-to-face in somewhere with a nice beach and we'll do sharing and so on. They couldn't start flying people from South America to do that. So it became, how do we replicate the knowledge sharing? If we come up with a great mountain biking package in Peru, how do we start selling that into Mexico? And this is where things like social networking tools and video conferencing came into play to say, so for that specific business goal, this is the technology slice. What we try and do is get people to the point where they have a plan, they know what's important of those 10 boxes that they need to address, and they feel confident themselves in executing it, and then we as consultants can step back and they can find more technology-based partners who will do the nuts and bolts.
Great. We had another question for Tiziana. How do your customers get the team to buy into putting themselves in the video, on the video?
Yes, that's a good question actually, because at the end of the day, using any type of technology that we were talking about is useless if you don't have your employees to actually buy into it and use it. It's like an empty shell, and it wouldn't, no one would benefit from it. So the way that CNET is helping organizations to really drive that kind of engagement, to have their people to use the technology and really buy into it, is we're trying to put the barriers down as far as we can. So using the app, for example, we make it as easy as possible. We help organizations to create projects and break down filming directions into quite short and cohesive shots, which we call a shot list. So once you ask your people, because it's a big ask to have them to basically contribute and be involved into your project. So you want them to see right away that it's only going to take 30 seconds to maybe answer one of the questions. And once you log into the project and to the app, you have all the questions right in front of you. You can see that with one click, you can start filming, and it's a 30-second shot. So it's going to take you about a minute or two to basically complete the entire shot list. And yes, so I think we're just trying to break down the barriers and really make it as easy as possible for them to access. And actually, one thing that we are also starting to do is to have collaborations. It's a collaboration that we're working on with Silicon Reef now, where we want to break down the barriers even more and have our technology accessible directly on an intranet. For example, I think we're trying to have this collaboration with Silicon Reef and Unilever, where people don't even have to download the app anymore, but have something like a Q&A with a CEO directly accessible on their intranet.
Great. Thank you very much. And a question for Tom. With all the tools Unilever uses, do you feel engagement can still be improved?
Yes, it's the short answer. I'll give you a little bit more than that. So yes, absolutely. So firstly, adoption of our tools isn't at 100%. So there's some actual KPIs, some actual metrics and targets for us to aspire to there. But the other thing to acknowledge that I think Sam hinted at before is that this isn't a project, with a beginning and an end, make your employees engaged, and then you walk away from it. Right? This is about continuing to keep your people engaged, to make sure that the new ones, their energy and their excitement transmits to others. That the people that have been with your company for a few years and are a bit, long in the tooth and feel like they know it all, that they still get excited about working there. So engagement is never done. And so it's just about how you keep that wheel turning and how you help facilitate your organization being engaged. And that might be by bringing in new tools and technologies. But more importantly, it's about understanding what your employees want and how you as an organization can facilitate that to get out of the way, as we were talking about earlier on, so that they can be effective, get their job done, enjoy the culture of the place they're working in, so that they can want to come to work in the morning.
I think building upon that, I think the statement that engagement is never done, that 100% adoption isn't achieved, but also the existing tool suite that we have, we're now in a world of like cloud and everything is constantly evolving, new features coming out every week. It's really hard to stay on top of, you know, the new things that are coming out from Microsoft on Office 365, it's ever evolving, new features. And so it's how you communicate those and the purpose of each of those new tools as well. That's one of the fundamental things that why engagement and adoption needs to continually be driving to make sure that people know, yep, this week you've got these new features coming into Teams, and in the future the roadmap is this, and it's going to help you buy this, 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 and this. And so it's understanding the roadmap, communicating it effectively, and providing people with the content of learning materials, adoption materials, and the fundamental reason why they should get involved and use it in the first place. So that's why I think adoption is never going to end, and engagement in all of the tools. So question for me, when considering the move to Office 365 and the adoption of all the new tools, where do we begin from an intranet and the document management to a suite of tools that will truly change the way people work? What would be our first step? So, as I've just said, it's a big suite of things. There's a vast array of things that you can do. Yes, you can get a new intranet. There's some great products out there which are intranet products that you can go and buy. But I think it goes back to what Sam was giving an example of, the personas. That's fundamentally where you should start. The people, what do they want to try and achieve? What does somebody's work day look like? How do people want to interact with the platforms that they have available to them? What are their troubles? What are their goals? And then build scenarios around them and say, okay, well, this person is in the marketing team. Marketeers, as a general, they need to access this tool, this tool, this tool. And you can start to build scenarios from the personas, fit them all together, and then communicate effectively using the tools that you've got available, like Yammer, like Teams, and drive the adoption through the teams, through the applications and products that you have. That's where I would say I would start with discussing through workshops with people, having the conversations. That's where I would say is a good starting point. Do you have anything to build on that, Sam?
A lot of people kind of position intranets at the heart of a digital workplace, and I push back a little bit on that and say, you can have a good digital workplace without an intranet. You can maybe meet a lot of the needs by mobile apps instead these days. It really just depends on saying, what is the role of the intranet alongside everything else? And that's what's tough with things like Office 365, is that there's so many functional overlaps between the different pieces that it falls on you guys to make those choices about, for us, how are we going to position each one so that we don't have the same thing happening in 3 different places and people get confused about what to do.
I'd agree with that, and I'd also say it's how you've described personas as being at the heart of it in the first stage. It all goes back to what Tiana was talking about with authentic stories, you know, and the fact that emotions are a far better way of getting people on board with what you're trying to do than just a cold, hard facts. You know, if you tell the story of, well, what do we as an organisation want to achieve? What kind of people are we bringing in? And what jobs do they do? And how do they want to work? You know, if you're starting to ask these questions and you're creating personas to get a day in the life of a handful of different people throughout your organisation, pretty soon that's going to paint you a picture of what it is you want to do. If you start then getting into, well, yeah, but how much money have we got? And, you know, do we want things in the cloud or do we want things not on the cloud? And which technology stacks are we going to use? And if we build an intranet and then we've got other tools over here that do the same, you're never going to have an answer. You're never going to. Because the moment you've got an answer around one element of it, another thing's going to come up that's going to cause you to scrap everything and start all over again. The way to do it is personas, having a shared vision, having personas around what your people want to do, and then going from there.
Great. Open it to floor. Yeah. Yes. Good question.
Now to the human question.
You can. The old-fashioned way. Yeah. Please do.
I've got 2 actually. First one's for Tom. It's really important. I noticed that Linton was trying to be around quite high. Get on the rock and minty.
Why would you want to?
The second one, I've been sort of leading management teams for about 30 years. One of the trends that I'm seeing that I'm absolutely loving, and you alluded to it with the right Unilever has, is people tend to engage more with companies that care about the things that people care about, the whole sense of purpose.
Yeah.
I'd love to hear just a couple of stories, rather than how to follow Tiziano's lead. I'd love to hear a couple of stories of how you use technology and has a role to play in engaging people with that greater purpose.
So I can think of an example where we've done something, and it goes back to Tom talking about there's a new CEO at Unilever who joined this year in January. Combined with the Yammer initiative that he had around asking questions and communications directly, Silicon Reef were involved in a project with Unilever and the CEO around creating ideas, employee-generated ideas around 4 new areas of strategy that he wants to drive forward. Everybody had the opportunity as part of the Yammer communication that was sent out by the CEO to come to a SharePoint site that we built, which was kind of on brand, everything. It looked exactly, was really engaging. His video was at the top of the page describing what vision he has for the strategy of the company. And it was a call to action, actually, around how people can share ideas. And there were over 2,500 ideas generated in about 2 months worth of engagement from, and again, I believe it was about 8,000 people involved, maybe higher actually, involved in creating these ideas and communicating. So we built something that was engaging those employees to share the CEO story, but they really felt part of it, and they're actually contributing to the future of the organization as well. And there was a prize and award giving at the beginning of this month as well, actually. So,
you know, you've stolen my answer, Alex.
Yes.
But connected to that, you know, we had a big launch event where Alan, the new CEO, kind of did a bit of this is where I see us going, this is the kind of idea, this is the kind of vision I've got, but what I want is for you guys to help me to turn that into a plan. Give us ideas about what we can be doing differently. How we can reduce our dependency on plastic was one of the big questions that was being asked, or one of the big topics of conversation that was generated. And we started off working with our comms colleagues and arranging this, you know, video, this live broadcast. And we were like, how many people are going to attend, and are people going to get behind it? And, you know, because we're a small coalition of the willing. We're a small, centralized global team, but you know, we've got people in every country in the world, and we're like, how effectively is this going to work? And then the day of these events happened, and we were getting photos being shared on Yammer, on the right platform of choice, and showing rooms full of 50 people, 100 people, factories in Brazil, offices in India, people in Vietnam getting together in a small office because there's only 5 of them in that particular town. And they were all getting involved, and they were all using Yammer to get involved. And then we've had this kind of reach out bit that Alex was talking about, going, what are your ideas? Contribute. And we've had workshops spinning all over the place. There was one where somebody shared a photo of, I think it was somewhere in South America, where there'd been a school strike. So everyone had brought their kids into work. And so you got all these kids sat around with their parents, kind of trying to crowdsource and solutionize ideas about how we can make Unilever better. And everyone was just blown away by that, and that makes everyone feel a little bit more engaged, a little bit more excited, and a little bit more motivated. So yeah, there's been a real kind of shock of enthusiasm, and it's been sparked by a new CEO who wants to do things differently, but it's been enabled by technology, and it's been empowered by our employees.
Great. Thank you. Sorry, question was over there. Yeah.
Yeah, I was just going to ask, you mentioned Unilever. Which organisation do you think is doing the best job of driving employee engagement?
You want to ask Unilever which company is doing the best job of driving employee engagement?
Is it Procter & Gamble?
Novartis. I don't know. The thing is that I find interesting is the whole dynamic between big organisations and small organisations. And Unilever is a huge organisation, and therefore we're able to say, oh yes, tens of thousands of people are doing this, and we've got, you know, video footage of people all over the world, you know, getting involved. But you get smaller companies, you know, like some of those that are represented on the stage here, where everyone shares the same excitement about what they're trying to achieve, and everyone's on the same page in terms of what the job is to be done. And the impact that those can have is extraordinary, you know, and yes, big companies can make an impact, and we've got the lobbying power, we've got the impact of our activities around trying to drive sanitation and improve living standards for people in our value chain. But you've got small companies that are just having a really huge impact on the world as well. So, I mean, it would be impossible for me to try and go, yeah, this company is the best at it, because it's different things for different people. And it's just about doing the best you can and trying to encourage your people to do the best they can as well. It's kind of a mealy mouth kind of version of an answer. But,
Mine was connected to your answer before. So you're saying you're listening and listening and listening, but how are you then playing it back and saying, like, you've been heard, this is what we're doing and why, this is not what we're doing and why?
That's a really good question, and one that I'm probably not really equipped to answer, because I'm not close to the next phase in the CEO project. I'm providing the technology and the opportunities, but I'm not involved in the kind of pulling it all together and stuff. But what I do know is that we've made a determination that every idea submitted is made visible and available. So no matter how crazy, no matter how silly, if you've submitted an idea, it's going to be there for you to look at, for you to see, and for you to see that it perhaps hasn't been addressed by the CEO directly. But that's how we leverage the power of the crowds then. Because if someone's made a suggestion that, you know, through the various filtration methods hasn't worked its way up to the CEO, and then a lot of people get on it and go, hang on a second, this idea's got some legs. This is something that we want to get involved in. A lot of conversation goes on, a lot of people start getting involved, and then that drives activity. Whether it flags an alarm bell because, hang on, there's a subject matter here that we need to bring in some subject matter expertise or some leadership onto it, or whether it's just a great idea that we can pass on up the food chain, if you like. By being open, by being social, by crowdsourcing, but then being transparent about those ideas, it means that eventually the best ideas will get to the top.
I'm going to throw in a couple of suggestions around that from what I've seen in some of the clients. So a nice little thing to do is the kind of you said, we did format. So following up and reminding people about why these changes are happening, because sometimes it's a big question that gets asked and it gets months and months of debate, and then an answer pops up and people have forgotten about why is it that you're doing this again. But the other thing that you can do nicely with like an intranet is that you can give people different depths of answer. So employee satisfaction survey. What normally happens is that a PowerPoint deck gets shared around for your business unit, and then it goes somewhere to die, and people forget about all the commitments made about dealing with that deck. Much better to turn it into a microsite where those KPIs, the indicators, are kept live, and if people are interested, or maybe every once a month you do a news story saying, here's what's happening now, but if you want to know more, click here, and then you can go more into the detailed story, almost being like a peripheral member of the project team, if you've got that culture of working out loud and saying, you don't need to know this, but if you want to know it, then everything's available for you to see.
I agree with that, and you've just made me think of a commitment that we've made as part of the Yam Jams that I flashed up on the screen, which is basically an allotted time slot where you're encouraging everyone to get onto Yammer to talk about a certain subject. And they've been incredibly effective at driving people to Yammer, getting people creating ideas, having a bit of a whinge, you know, they've been hugely successful. And almost us doing those internally as part of technology services then led to the CEO one that came later. And one of the things we've been saying to anyone that's managing a community or anyone that's setting up an event like this is you've got to make sure that all the questions are answered. Now, if that answer is, you know, crowdsource, someone saying, don't be so silly, this is the answer, it's here on our intranet, or it's something that everyone knows once you've been here for 6 months, or whether that's a director kind of, formal response. Every answer needs to get answered. But like I said before, by being open and transparent about it, putting those questions out there, that is almost your kind of gatekeeper, because if you don't answer a question, someone's going to tell you about it.
Actually, I just want to add one thing, because it just reminds me that another way we actually do something similar with CNET is, because we were talking about questions and answers, I think I touched on it before, but one format that a lot of our customers are doing is Q&A sessions with the CEO, where basically companies invite everyone within the business from top to bottom to record and film themselves asking questions to the CEO. And as you said, every answer needs to get answered. So basically, the CEO, one example is Hikma. It's a pharmaceutical company in Jordan, and their CEO is called Siggy, and then there's this great episode coming out every now and then where every employee, no matter where, no matter what type of seniority they are in, they're like, hi Siggy, I just wanted to ask, and questions from strategy to what's your favorite color, or where do you live, or what is the actual strategy that you are trying to drive for the next couple of months, and so on. And then CEO are being put on the spot, and they have to answer every question, and this is basically them being released, and everyone is then literally being part of the conversation and having their CEO answer any questions that they ask. So I think this is also a good way to engage them.
So we are on the same theme of every question getting asked. I'm going to wrap it up now, but if you do have any other questions, please come and find us afterwards, or if they're on Slido, we will try and get back to you as well. But I'm going to wrap it up here because we've got some more breakfast things to tuck into there, so please make sure you do that. And it's a bit of half an hour before we get to leave, so good time to chat to us, yourselves. I just want to say thank you very much for coming to Silicon Reef's first Fathom event. It's been great to have you here. I hope you've enjoyed it. And thank you to the team. Is that what you say?
Spontaneous, Alex.
Oh, sorry. I didn't get that. The team are here, so the guys with the lanyards around the room. If you want to ask Silicon Reef any questions, the guys with the lanyards are the people to go to. That was awkward.
The team are asking for their thanks.
Yeah, I was like, okay, thanks, guys. So yeah, thank you to the panelists as well for coming and giving up their time today. Really appreciate that. So thank you, everybody. Just a round of applause for these guys. Thank you. Well done.